one of the primary reasons why people go to these gatherings is really focused on relationships, right? They're going because of people who are going there, and through the process of learning, they're also building relationship networks and so forth. That's why emotions and intellectual stimulation is both important. You're learning together, but through that emotional experience, you're sharing this experience, you're building relationships. And that's why we take this holistic approach, because we want people to retain information, make better decisions, and also to build relationships through that process. And so how do we capture all of that in our programming?
Welcome back to Creativity is in Business. Hello world, how are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Monica Kang. I'm super excited to have my friend Abe Kim here. How are you, Abe?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Monica. Thanks for inviting me.
Bringing people together, as you mentioned, in a way, that Kodak moment. What can they do better to create moments like that in their community?
I learned through my own career. I had a very unusual career where a lot of my work, although my background's in foreign policy and in U.S.-Asia foreign policy, and I've done work in academia, I've done work in the finance world, political risk, I've done work in the national security establishment, think tank, and so forth. So really kind of eclectic by accident and no intention at all. But the common theme that tied all of this together has always been on how to help leaders make more effective decisions in the work, that be it in the finance, be it in national security, be it in academia, think tank policy, so forth. And what I discovered is that through that experience is that especially adults, the best way adults learn is not just engaging them intellectually, but also engaging them emotionally. So we call it the heart and mind. And how through programming you engage them on these simultaneously, right? And because of a couple of reasons, when adults are engaged intellectually and emotionally, they tend to remember or retain information a lot better than if it's just a mental engagement, right? And secondly, people make decisions based on emotion as well as intellectual. And so by engaging them emotionally, you are helping to guide these leaders to make certain kinds of decisions, right? And a lot of them are often high stakes decisions, right? Yes. And also, when they're making decisions or doing these leadership programs, we have to think about why people gather, right? Obviously, one is to get information, but in this kind of online world, we can get information from a whole host of places. You don't have to go to a meeting, right, or go to a conference to retain information. But one of the primary reasons why people go to these gatherings is really focused on relationships.
I'm sure there's some in the audience who's like, okay, that sounds great, Abe, but for somebody who's never thought about that, where do I start?
Yeah, this is, for me, it took many, many years to learn about something like. Point one is, I think where you and I have learned a lot is really through learning. And I think this is one of the good books. Start to think about, for example, how, we're in the nonprofit world, but I think what's important is that this kind of emotional and intellectual engagement has been going on for a long, long time in the commercial world, right? In companies like Apple or Disney or others. And they've been and that's how they became multi-billion-dollar industries, is because they are engaging people on these multiple levels, multiple sensory levels. Yes, the art of gathering. And so I think what part one is just to start reading these important resources and just getting a sense of how other industries are doing that and how some of those things can be applied to your own. Because a lot of industries, a lot of sectors, believe it or not, are not even thinking about these kinds of things, right? And so, but there are a lot of other industries that are so far ahead. So that's one. And secondly, I think just understanding that your program, any kind of program, has both an intellectual component and an emotional component. Starting to look at your programs through that prism. For example, I think one of the things that we started to think about is how conferences and meetings are actually a journey. We're taking our participants through a journey. Yeah. And if you think about it in those terms, where in a journey, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? But thinking about if your conference was a journey and you were trying to take your your stakeholders, your participants through this journey, you want to have an introduction where people are starting to warm up, getting an understanding of the environment and what the purpose of why you're all together, taking them through almost like a high point, a climax, or a peak moment as something that they will understand and retain, and then kind of an afterglow or understanding of why at the end, understanding why the people, your members or your participants were involved and what you want them to remember from this journey. And so
I love that. Even in my presentations, one of the things I often think about, what's the energy level at the beginning? How am I going to get them rallied up, excited?
So what that does is it really starts to help us to rethink about over-programming too, putting too much in a program. I think we have a tendency of doing that. Some of those unplanned times in between programs are just as important, if not more important, than sometimes those pre-programmed.
Your stakeholders are often from Gen Z to baby boomers with at least 5 or 6 different industries. They all need something different. So how can you create something intentional of a journey in one space when all their needs and interest is different?
I know that's a great question, and it is difficult, and and the needs are different, and I think based on experience, individuals that are there, but also stage of life, right? In terms of how to understand these different generations, I think it's what you just stated is a lot of it's asking questions and learning about the communities or the communities that you're serving, right? And so I spend a lot of time just talking with people and asking questions about what motivates them, what are their concerns. So why would they be involved with leadership programs and organizations? Because they're already leaders, right? And they're already, they have maybe a decade or so more in their career. They're comfortable, but just understanding what assets they bring to the table and what are their needs, right? So their assets obviously experience, and their need is oftentimes a lot of these people, for example, are thinking about their own legacy, like how can I contribute and give back? And they don't have platforms because they've spent all their life building their career and they're part of other maybe peer-to-peer type organizations, but not vertical connection with the young people. And then in the reverse, if you look at emerging leaders, right, up and coming like and so forth, they don't have the experience, they don't have the necessarily all the connections, but they're hungry, right? And that's their asset. They're hungry, but also they're willing to learn.
So thank you very much for sharing your insights and positivity. I want to wrap up with a quote for perspective. Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. And I think it's a powerful reminder about, creating moments and taking the space. That's something actually everyone can do with these resources that we just talked about. And I think we'll need it so much more now that we are all creating moments for one another.
Stay safe, healthy, and sane. So.
I love that. Man. Oh, when was the last time you were overjoyed and why?
When was the last time I was overjoyed and why?
Great question to think about now, right?
Yeah. I think for me, so I have 4 kids. When actually all of our family got together around the dinner table for the first time in a long, long time since my son went off to college to LA. We barely see him. And obviously our girls, and they're always busy with their schoolwork. So trying to get everyone around the dinner table at the same time, while I'm not as busy and I'm actually home, and everyone is not busy, coming together, I think was one of those kind of one of those, as they call it, Kodak moments, right?
Well, thank you all very much, and we'll see you all soon again.